A very warm good evening to all of you. Welcome to the 166th session of Centa's webinar series for teachers. I hope all of you are keeping safe and staying healthy. The topic for today's webinar is formative assessments in secondary classes, and the facilitator for this session is Dr. Pooja Jain. Uh, Dr. Pooja Jain is a facilitator, is a passionate educator, and an enthusiastic public speaker. Dr. Pooja Jain is currently the head of English department at the Assam Valley School, Balipura.
Rishabh.
Yes, ma'am. Today's facilitator is Dr. Pooja Jain. A small introduction about our facilitator today. Dr. Jain is a passionate educator and an enthusiastic public speaker. Dr. Pooja Jain is currently the head of English department at the Assam Valley School, Balipara. She is also the Round Square representative in charge of public speaking activities and lower school dramatics. Having attained a bachelor's degree in science, she followed her heart into master's in English literature, doctorate in English literature. She has worked in a personality development and grooming institute in Kanpur, Sherwood Inter College, Nainital, and Scindia School of Boys, Gwalior. Dr. Jain has attended council workshops on literature and language, ICSE and ISC. She has attended a plethora of online webinars and pursued certificates and degree courses. Pooja ma'am has been conducting master classes, teachers training sessions, and webinars powered by Aditya Birla Education Academy and Centa. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. Before I hand over the session to ma'am, I would like to inform all the teachers that they will receive participation certificates for the session. So please do fill out the feedback form that will be shared with you towards the end of the session. Uh, Over to you, ma'am. Can you please share your screen again, ma'am?
Yes. Good evening. Can you see? Is it
Yes, ma'am.
visible, Rishabh?
It is visible. It is visible.
Right.
If you can do
Thank you.
the slideshow. Yeah.
Is it fine now?
Uh, yes, ma'am. Slideshow, ma'am. Full screen slideshow.
Right.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this session on formative assessments for secondary classes. So let us first begin about talking with. Let's begin with talking about assessments. And we all know that as educators in the education system, conducting assessments is very, very important. Be it regular assessments, be it towards the end, be it formative, be it summative assessments. However, our education system is such that we focus a lot on the end of semester exams and which is called summative assessments. So today we are going to focus on small capsules and small portions, which are known as formative assessment, also known as assessment for learning. Let us understand what is formative assessment or assessment for learning, and to be able to understand what exactly formative assessment is, let us also know what it is not. So traditionally, we have assessments called tests and examinations to assess a child's knowledge, learning, potential, and ability, right? And assessment of learning, assessment for learning are the two types of assessments that are generally conducted. Now, formative assessment is not assessment of learning. It is generally carried out by the teachers to collect information about how much knowledge has a child attained or gained. Where summative assessment or assessment of learning is done towards the end of a course or a semester, formative assessments are done during the course, during a topic, towards the end of a small portion or a topic in order to understand the child's potential and abilities and skills. Now, assessment for learning occurs at all stages. It is a learning process. And here the students are encouraged to take an active role becoming self regulated learners. And they also become confident in their own process of learning throughout, because it is not something which sums up towards the end of the course or towards the end of the semester or towards the end of the session. So, assessment for learning is the one that is referred to as formative assessment, and it is the process of collecting and interpreting data, evidence that is used by teachers and learners to decide on the learning potentials and capacities of the learners, where they need to go, where they stand, and how can they move forward from where they are currently. So that is a quick overview about assessment for learning, which is formative assessment. Now, formative assessments refers to a variety of methods that teachers can use to conduct in-process internal evaluation of students' learning needs, comprehension skills, understanding, academic progress during a lesson, during a unit, or during a course. It is an ongoing process that is used by teachers for teaching and learning and by students also. It is used to improve student understanding, to improve the learning outcomes, and it really helps students to become self directed, self regulated learners. It helps teachers to identify concepts that students are struggling to understand, the skills that are required in a particular class or by the students, to understand what is the difficulty, the learning standards, and how to bridge that gap between the learning standards and the student ability and potential or comprehension so that adjustments can be made to the lessons, instructions can be tweaked and twisted, and there can be academic support given to the learners and the students. Formative assessments today are an integral part of effective teaching and learning. It can be tutor led, it can be peer led, it can be self assessed, and it has very low stakes, unlike summative assessments. What is the purpose of a formative assessment? So, very clearly, a formative assessment is used to collect detailed information that can be used to improve instruction, student learning while it is still happening. And we do not wait till the end of the session or till the end of the semester, like I said, or till the end of a particular course. It is used by teachers to adjust teaching strategies. So, when a teacher identifies learning gaps in a student or a learner in a particular class, and when a teacher identifies that this is where the student is struggling in a particular concept or topic, the teaching techniques, strategies, methodology, pedagogy, everything is tweaked and adjusted, keeping in mind obviously the curriculum and the content, but it is tweaked in order to adjust to the learning strategies and needs of the students and learners. It is also used to monitor the learning progress of students during the period of instruction or during the academic transaction in class. It encourages learning, promotes motivation by emphasizing progress and achievement rather than failure. So, where in summative assessment, we focus on report cards, marks, scores, and grades. In formative assessment, we focus more on achievement, we focus more on learning, we focus more on self directed learning, peer directed learning, and tutor directed learning. It also helps learners recognize their weaknesses, their strengths, and work on the areas they need improvement because it's an ongoing process during a particular topic. So the child understands, identifies their learning requirements, their learning gaps, the weaknesses that they have, and the strengths, and they can work on them accordingly. It also helps teachers identify where learners are struggling. What are the problems that students are struggling with? What are the gaps? What are the differently abled learning processes that children are going through? And most importantly, formative assessment helps hugely in providing continuous, consistent, and timely feedback. Because here the feedback doesn't stay and stop till the end of the process, but it happens on a regular basis. So these were the few agendas, the intentions, purpose behind conducting a formative assessment. What are the few key principles of a formative assessment? Certain things that we must keep in mind. It empowers learners to take an active part in their own learning, because formative assessment is just not about testing, it is not just about scoring or grading, it also is about active teaching learning strategy. It can include flipped classroom methods, it can include digital devices, it can include various strategies which we will deal with a little later. But formative assessments helps children understand their own potential, their own growth, their own statistics, their own graph, and they are actively involved in the entire process of their own learning. It helps children communicate confidence that children can improve on themselves. And like I said earlier, also, it focuses more on achievements, accomplishments, and attainments than on failures. It develops learners' confidence in peer assessment and self assessment. It helps teachers and students collect information about individuals. So, here, through formative assessments, rather than focusing on the entire group or class or larger groups, individuals can be focused on and individual needs can be catered to. Learning objectives, learning outcomes, success criteria, rubrics are shared. So, according to which students and learners can prepare themselves and they can attain what they want to accomplish. Teaching strategies and responses can be tweaked based on the observations made on the results. So, how a process goes, how a particular topic goes, and how a student or learner fares or scores or attains or accomplishes in that topic, in that concept, decides upon is based on the observations, and then teaching process, strategy, methodology can be tweaked and can be adjusted based on the class response. Success criteria. So, when success criteria, rubrics, parameters are shared with learners, they become more aware, they become more confident, and they are able to achieve and attain and accomplish a little better. Let us quickly look at a quick difference between formative assessment and summative assessment. So, where formative assessment helps students to learn and practice and become self regulated, self directed learners throughout the course, it helps identify gaps and improve upon learning. And there are strategies and approaches that provide student specific needs and that caters to student specific differently abled learners. Whereas summative assessment is at the end of the instructional or academic transactional period. It is only to collect evidence of student knowledge, learning, skill, and proficiency, and it is a cumulative assessment. It does not cater to particularly to every student and its needs, because it is not differently or it is not meant for differently abled children, and there is very little scope for differentially abled learning and strategies. What we call is differentiated learning. So there is very little scope of differentiated learning and strategies in summative assessment as opposed and contrasted to the formative assessment. We will very quickly look at a few strategies for formative assessments. So when we talk about education system, when we talk about learning teaching process, and when we talk about assessments, we must bear in mind that it is a learner who is always the focus and at the center. It is the learner who is the biggest stakeholder in this entire process, in this entire teaching learning agenda. So let us quickly look at a few strategies, few steps, few methods in which formative assessments can be conducted. Digital devices and digital platforms, I mean, the pandemic has taught us a lot, and we've all learned a lot of applications and tools where digital applications and tools have been very beneficial in conducting and in transacting academic curriculum and content. And this is where, and this is how we can also conduct our formative assessments. There is this app called Quizzes, Kahoot, Padlet, Edpuzzle, Google Forms, Quizlet. These are some digital devices, digital platforms and applications and tools through which you can curate your formative assessments for differently abled children. You can have something for everyone, and this is what is one of the main agendas and principles of formative assessment is. There needs to be something for everyone. You can have formative assessments in the form of fill in the blanks, true, false, match the following, MCQs. You can have word walls, word search, crossword puzzles, Pictionary games. You can have questionnaires and surveys. You can just have verbal brainstorming and discussions and put those pointers down on your green board or on your whiteboard for everybody to see. And then children can elaborate on all of that. You can have compare and contrast, reviews, journal, diary entries, dictation, spelling tests, character sketches and character analysis, themes, bullet points, comprehension, open ended questions, and framing questions by students. So, I'll give you very quick examples of some of these. So, I come from a literature and a language background. I'm an English teacher by profession. And all of these strategies I utilize in my class when it comes to conducting active teaching learning strategies and formative assessments in classroom. So quizzes, Kahoot, Padlet, Edpuzzle, Google Forms. I'm sure most of us are aware of all of these digital platforms and apps and tools. Fill in the blanks is not a big deal and it's nothing very new for us, even true and false and match the following. These are some of those strategies that cater to the low end learners because they feel very confident and they feel very good when they see that there is something for them. Word wall, how I conduct word wall is so when I have taught a small portion or half a topic or half a chapter in the literature texts, I ask children to find out, say, about 5, 8, 10 difficult words, find out and figure out their parts of speech, the parts of speech of the word, and based on the text and the context in which that word is used, to interpret in their own way the meaning of the word and then create a word wall in their notebook. So I give them about 10 minutes towards the end of the class or on the next day where they can make it even creative and they can have a word wall which is very creative and decorative and pleasant to look at. Likewise, word search. So once the child has read a topic or a chapter or a text, you can ask them to identify 5 words and replace those 5 words with any other word. So where they have to come up with synonyms or dictionary meanings or contextual meanings or textual meanings. So this really helps children come up and enhance their vocabulary. Like with crossword puzzles, so this we can devise and design based on the chapter that we are teaching, the text we are teaching. And we can curate and create our own crossword puzzles or word search puzzles. Brainstorming and discussions come very handy and useful when it comes to doing compositions in classes or long answers or thematic questions or ethics based questions or ethical questions where you pose a question, you pose a topic, and you ask children to reflect on it individually. Think about it for about 2, 3 minutes. Write down the pointers in their own words in their notebooks. And then they throw words at you, they throw keywords at you, and you can assess in the entire class through their responses, written and verbal responses, how much each child has understood the topic, how much each child has gauged or assessed or analyzed or interpreted the topic. Likewise, questionnaires and surveys will help you understand the child's effort in trying to analyze anything. So, prepare a questionnaire based on any topic. I mean, these questionnaires really come very handy when you do field work or practical work, and they can just go around asking people, knowing their opinions, taking their views. And this also determines the sincerity, the effort, the perseverance put in by each child, how each child has taken up a task, and how sincerely each child has taken up a task. Compare and contrast again comes very handy when you have, for example, in literature, again, if I have to say, you have 2 characters and you have to compare 2 situations, 2 themes, 2 texts, or 2 characters, and then bring out contrasting features, similarities, and differences. So, this really helps children understand, analyze, go a little more deeply into the text, connect the text with other texts, and bring out similarities and differences. Reviews, journal, diary entries again are very effective because they help children critique, interpret, analyze, reflect, especially diary entries are very good as reflective processes. And by the end of the day, when the child sits down to reflect on the day's happenings and tidings and writes down whatever happened and went by, it gives each child some power, some control over their own thoughts and actions. Dictations and spelling tests can happen in any subject. Just a 10-mark quick dictation, quick spelling test will really help children upgrade their vocabulary, their spellings, and enhance their reading skills. Character sketch, analysis of themes, of the surroundings again helps child critically think and analyze the text and what's happening in the text, especially in history, literature, mythology, because they're able to connect that text to real life. They're able to put themselves into the shoes of the character, understand the pain or the agony or the suffering or the happiness, the emotions and the joys of each character, and are able to come up with that. Comprehension, again, is very good unseen passages, because when you give a paragraph or two paragraphs to the children to read, and then they are able to interpret, comprehend, understand it in their own way, and then you can ask lower order thinking questions and higher order thinking questions, including the open ended questions, prediction questions: what do you think, how do you analyze, how do you interpret. If you were to end this story, how would you do that? If you were to give another title to the story, how would you do that? And these 1 mark, 2 mark questions, I mean, if you're conducting a formative assessment, don't conduct it for many, many marks. Keep it as simple as 10 marks, because here we are only understanding the child's comprehension ability and skill. Here we are trying to understand how much has the child, how deep has the child been able to involve himself or herself into the text and the context. And one another activity that I do with my children is framing questions. So once, even if you've done half a portion or the entire topic or the text, ask children to frame questions before we give them worksheets and we give them a test paper and we give them questions to answer. When children have the power to frame their own questions, they think, they critique, they analyze, and their questioning technique, their comprehension skills really enhance. And what I do is I turn some of these questions into worksheets. I discuss these questions openly with the children, and I give those questions back to them as homework to find out the answers. So it is their effort, their questions, their worksheet, and they find out the answers to those questions. Designing a slogan, a poster, a visual art, or a collage. So, not everybody may be very good with writing. So, we all have those children who have different skills, different potentials, different abilities, and not everybody can express it in words. There are children who might be creative and artistic in their approach and their outlook. So I tell them to make word walls as decorative, as beautiful, as creative as they can, to design a slogan, a poster, a collage in a particular topic that I have taught, and connect it cross curricular wise also. Bring an aspect from other subjects, making it even more beautiful, varied, and culturally diverse. Interviews and hot seats, we won't be able to conduct it for the entire class at one go, but at one go, even if three children, we can take it up. So what happens in interviews and hot seats, especially in history and literature, after we've done and covered up a topic, one child as a volunteer, or we choose a child, comes and sits on the hot seat, and the other children can ask that particular character questions. So that child is portraying as a literary or historical figure or character, and the other children in the class can come up with 4 or 5 questions. And this child who is on the hot seat has to think like the character and feel like the character and respond like the character. So this enhances and this instills empathy in the children. So they feel the motives, the intentions of the character, and that is how they're able to understand and then respond. So they're able to make a connection of the text with themselves, with their real lives, and the surroundings. A flashcard for peer assessment, recording of an audio podcast talking about the topic or a lecture or a presentation, a biodrama, and a narrative, creating a narrative behind some say biological context or some even in environmental studies, in history, in geography, children can connect it and create a narrative with it, writing summary in bullet points in 100 words, 200 words. So what I do is after I've taught a literature text to the children, I tell them to summarize this entire story or the poem in 10 bullet points and reduce it to 5 bullet points. Or I give different word limits to different children based on their writing potential and skill. So if I want 200 words to be written for a summary, I don't give 200 words to everybody. And that is where I try to create an opportunity for everyone because there is something for everyone in a formative assessment. Case studies and student presentations, either individual or in group, really helps. And reading, so when a child reads in the class for a paragraph or two paragraphs or a few lines, a quick peer feedback really helps. So rather than the teacher giving feedback to the children all the time, we can also have children giving feedback to their peers and making them feel confident and accepted and in creating a safe and non-threatening or inclusive environment in the class. Self-assessment and peer assessment. So sometimes what I do is when I have asked children to write compositions and I have given them the success criteria, rubrics and parameters, I have them exchange their worksheets or copies or answers once in a while. And I give the answers away, especially to the worksheets, and for compositions or maybe even an answer, and let other children read out other people's work and presentations. And then there is a peer assessment. So we set a grading system in the class, and like we how we do it for ourselves, and that grading system is shared with everyone in the class. And based on that parameters, the marking scheme that we've created and the grading system that we've created, students assess each other's work, and that gives everybody a little onus and little responsibility and confidence to assess their own work and to assess other people's work. So this is how self-assessment and peer assessment or tutor assessment, peer mentoring really plays an important part in enhancing a child's confidence. Then there is this activity that is think, pair, share. So you throw a topic or a question at the children. Give each child 2 minutes to think about that particular topic or question. So then you have individual reflective thinking. Ask children to jot down their points and thoughts in their copies. Pair up children or put them in groups of three each. Give them 2 more minutes to discuss and share their points with one another. And once they have shared their points one another, they come to a consensus. And then each group or each pair shares the thoughts or the pointers with the rest of the class. So everybody has gotten an opportunity to think individually and jot down their individual thoughts and pointers, then share it with their partner. And then that group or that pair comes up and share it with the entire class. And then we have a scribe or the teacher can write down all the keywords, key terms, pointers on the board for everyone to have a collective cumulative sharing. So this I did in class. For example, you ask the children, if you're bullied in class or at school, how would you handle it? So there is independent reflective thinking for about a minute, and everybody is allowed to jot down and pen down their individual feelings. Then they come together in pairs. They share their thinking with each other. So there's paired thinking, 2 minutes of discussion between the two children or three children. And then unanimously, upon a consensus, they share their thoughts with the rest of the class. So this is how think, pair, share through brainstorming and discussion really helps and gives everybody an opportunity to think independently, reflect independently, share their thought process with the partner to gain more confidence, and then come up in the open in front of the class. Let us quickly look at certain skills that we need to assess, gauge for our children. So we all know that there are four basic skills that each child should master: reading, writing, speaking, and listening for sure. However, I, being a literature teacher and a language teacher, add on to a few more skills, that is comprehension skills, vocabulary skills. So for me, I emphasize on six particular skills. So obviously listening becomes first, speaking, reading, writing, comprehension and vocabulary. So these six skills will include all sorts of thought process, all sorts of skills, lower order thinking skills, higher order thinking skills, critique, and analysis, interpretation, and how. Let's look at it. So let's quickly understand how can we gauge and assess reading skills in our learners. So before you're assessing or gauging reading skills, just discuss with a friend or a colleague, answer these questions. What are the different ways in which you assess your students' reading skills? So what are the parameters? What is the rubric? What are the success criteria? What are the opportunities that we create in the classroom for learners and for each learner to assess their reading skills? Are the students able to read fluently, clearly, at a proper speed? Are they able to decode the words and gather their meanings while they're reading? What about the diction and pronunciation, voice modulation, intonation, pauses in their speech? Are they able to read with meaning? Are they able to imagine, visualize when they're reading and what they're reading? Or they're just reading for the sake of reading? How do your observations, notes, feedback support your students' learning progress in reading and listening? And do you provide feedback to the students? Does this feedback help them to improve? How do you see that this feedback is incorporated in another session? Or is it just a feedback done and dusted, given and forgotten? Listening skills. So, when you are gauging or assessing listening skills, ponder upon these questions. Are your students interested, focused, attentive? Do they understand and catch on to the nonverbal cues? Do they ask questions to seek clarity while they're listening to you? Do they respond, interrupt, disturb? Are they distracted? Are they able to determine the oral text, infer, or draw conclusions or answer questions? Do you provide feedback to the students? And again, is there any follow up of the feedback? And does this feedback help them to improve? How do you know that? When we talk about speaking skills, have you ever assessed the speaking skills of your students? If yes, how? What are the challenges that you face? What are the difficulties that you face while assessing the speaking skills of the children? How about the pronunciation, diction, fluency, clarity, speed, emotion, verbal and non-verbal language, vocabulary, grammatical structures? How creative is the student while communicating the ideas? Do you provide feedback to the students? And is there a follow up to this feedback? Does this feedback help students to improve? When we talk about writing skills, especially in English, and where you have written skills like in the form of reports, compositions, letters, long answers, consider the following questions. Is the text appropriate? Meaning to say, is the text appropriate to the topic? Has the child interpreted the topic, analyzed the topic properly? Is it just an overview, a summary, a critique, an analysis? Is the text clear and easy? Is the topic clear and easy to understand? Whatever is the child has written, is it sequentially, chronologically organized? Is it logical? Is there any range of vocabulary? What we're not looking at flowery language, we're not looking at a lavish language, but we're looking at a simple language with simple words, easy to understand, but yet catering to the needs of the content and the topic. Are the words repeated? Which means to say, is the vocabulary limited? Spelling mistakes, grammatical structures, sentence structure, syntax, punctuation, tense. Is the style appropriate for the writer and the reader? Is it content appropriate? Is it reader appropriate? What is good about the text? What is interesting about the composition? Has the has the writer thought about the reader of the text? So, is it audience appropriate when we talk about the text? So these are some, these, just excuse me, there is a power cut. So I'll continue with it. Harsha,
Sure, ma'am.
Harsha, am I visible and audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You are visible.
Okay, so I'll continue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when we consider these questions, we understand the writing skills and the written part of the writer of the students. Let us look at comprehension skills. So when you assess comprehension skills, you can consider the following questions. Do the students understand the vocabulary with the given context? Are the students able to make connections to self, to text, to the world? Are they able to find out the main idea, author's purpose, analyze text, structure, or characters? Are they able to infer from the given information, draw conclusions? Will they be able to answer the given questions? Will they be able to retell or summarize the given text in their own words, what we call as essay writing? Will they be able to give a title with justification? Should they reread for clarity? So, when we understand, when we ask these questions, and when we gauge and observe our children and learners accordingly, we understand their potential, their skills, and comprehension. Let us quickly draw a comparison of between summative assessment, that is assessment of learning, and formative assessment, which is assessment for learning. So, considering everything that we've been through so far, summative assessment, and to reiterate and to recap, summative assessment looks back and makes a judgment on what has already been learned. It is often conducted in the form of tests that are graded. It is conducted at the end of a session or a semester, telling students about their attainment, about their progress, report the outcomes. Whereas formative assessment is the assessment for learning, and it is quite different. It is more informal, diagnostic in nature, used by the teachers during the learning process to check whether students have understood something or not. To monitor and to give feedback is an important and essential part of the formative assessment. Most students must understand what they are expected to learn, know where they are now, and how they can make progress with what they know, what to study, and how to study. And formative assessments, very importantly, lays out a plan, a structure that helps students to meet their goals and the expected outcomes. What are the benefits of formative assessments and how we can sum up the entire formative assessment process? So, having gone through everything so far, formative assessments defines learning goals. It has increased rigor in class, improved academic attention, transaction and achievement, enhanced student motivation, student engagement, enhances active teaching learning strategies and methodology of pedagogy, feedback, personalized and individualized learning experiences for every child, and it makes children self regulated learners. When we talk about feedback, let us understand how feedback looks like and in what manner should we give feedback. Feedback should be appropriate, of course. It should provide, and it provides students with a clear learning objective. Involve students in their self assessment and reflection. It is specific, should be explicit, give examples wherever needed, ensure students understand what success looks like.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes,
Excuse me,
Harsha.
Pooja, ma'am. Ma'am, there is a background noise sound from your end, right? UPS sound, I think.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, there is a
Getting
power.
disturbed. Yeah, many of the participants are telling it is getting disturbed to them. And
Can I
yeah,
just give me 1 second, okay?
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Pooja ma'am, you can continue,
Yes.
ma'am. No problem.
Yes, yes. Yeah, thank you. So we were talking about feedback, and when we talk about, I'm so sorry, participants, for this power cut and this disturbance. So when we talk about feedback, we must understand that we must provide students with a clear learning objective. We have to include in self-assessment and reflection. We have to be specific and explicit about giving the feedback with examples. It is not about a generic or a general feedback. It is specific and learner-oriented feedback, ensuring students understand what success looks like, because the agenda, the intention behind giving a feedback is not to discourage or demotivate children. It is feed forward actually and not feedback. So when we are giving a feedback about what has happened, we're also showing the students and learners how to move ahead and forward and how to progress ahead. It also offers future steps for improvement. So rather than just saying that not done, not required, we need to tell them how it needs to be done and what else is required. Timely, consistent, and regular feedback is very, very important. And we must allow students and learners to ask questions while giving feedback or at the end of the session. Because the more curious and inquisitive our learners are, the more healthy and the more appropriate academic transactions and interactive academic transactions can become. So before I we move on to the question answer sessions, I just want to ask you people if you can list it down and Harsha will read it out for us at the end. Keeping in mind what formative assessments look like and how formative assessments have been so far, the session, three things that you found out or learned today which you didn't know earlier. What surprised you today and why? What were some of your challenging and best moments today? And what made you curious today? So, if you can just jot down some of these responses in the chat box, and Harsha will read out for us. And this is a way of doing reflection, participants. This is how, at the end of it, we can make our sessions, our academic transactions, at least once in a while, interactive and reflective. So we'll take about, say, a minute while some of you ponder upon these reflective questions and write down your responses. Three things that you found out or learned today that you didn't know or weren't aware of. What surprised you today and why? What were some of your challenging and best moments? And what made you curious? Also, there are times in my classes when I ask children, what is it that you want to know more about? And what would you do with what you know? That is a very, very important question that we must ask ourselves and our learners and our students. What shall we do with what we know? And how are we going to take our learning process forward?
Ma'am, there are few feedbacks given by the participants, ma'am.
Mhm.
Ganga ma'am is telling she learned innovative ways of conducting FAs, formative assessments.
Right,
Sanchita ma'am is telling it's actually it is a recapitulation of the activities that we are practicing in the schools.
right.
Then Ketiki ma'am is telling she was surprised by the types of formative assessments which could be applied throughout all the subjects.
Right. Great.
Feed forward is an interesting concept. Rekha ma'am is telling.
Right.
So Samuel ma'am is also telling feedback I knew, but feed forward is an interesting method.
So I
So
will just
there are
one
yeah
second.
feed.
So this feed, yeah, feed forward is what I can read in the chats also. So what happens is why I say feed forward participants is because there is feedback that we give to our children and learners all the time. Now what happens is that we focus more on the faults and the mistakes that students have done, and some children, they aren't able to take it very well. All of us, the kind of, maybe it comes across as critical to us. So why I say feed forward is because as much as we want to tell our learners and students and children that this is where you went wrong, we also want to tell them that this is how you can move ahead and forward. So feedback and moving forward is what I have put together as feed forward actually. Yes, Harsha, please.
Yes, ma'am. Uh, Few of them again. Uh,
So I can see
yeah,
that pure
formative.
learning,
Yeah,
yes.
yes, ma'am. There are few questions, ma'am. Can we take up the questions right now?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
please.
like there is majority, like maybe more than 50 or 60%. They are going for the feed forward method, ma'am. Whatever I explained. Yeah, there are few questions, ma'am.
Yes, please,
In the
yes.
beginning, Kumud Sharma, the participant is asking, what is the flashcard for assessment?
So what happens in flashcard is, so when you've taught a topic, a small topic or any topic that has been covered, so you can ask your students and learners to design flashcards in form of questions, in form of fill in the blanks, in form of true and false statements. And those placards and flashcards, it just becomes creative and it creates an interest among learners rather than just having a worksheet and question answers on board and in copy. So we can create something new, something designer, something that will interest our learners in various ways.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Padmasini ma'am is asking how our feedback should be actually to improve upon the present condition of learners.
So, like I said, that feedback should be compiled and mixed up with feed forward actually. So, as much as we want to tell our children that this is where they went wrong and this is where their mistake lies, we also need to tell them the way forward. So, when I, for example, I said this is not the correct spelling of formative assessment, the child will wonder because the child knows that is the spelling. Now, if I do not tell the child the correct spelling, I haven't helped the child. Or I tell the child where to find out the correct spelling or to go to some resource or somebody to find out the correct spelling. So when we just not tell, it's not only about telling what is wrong, but how to make it right is the feedback actually. Showing the way, showing strategies.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Charulita ma'am is asking, please suggest methods for primary grades.
So this is particularly for secondary classes. However, the same strategies you can tweak and twist in your own way for your levels. So it just depends on us. We are the curators, we are the facilitators, we are the guides, we are the mentors, we are the teachers, right? So the same strategies, most of these strategies can be tweaked and twisted and taken up and down the levels based on the requirements and the needs of the learner.
Thank you for the excellent reply, ma'am. Sita Lakshmi ma'am is asking, please explain exit card for social science.
So exit card, what happens in exit card is, so you've taught, and it can be applied to any subject, not just literature or history or social science. So exit card is where you have taught a topic, so over a period of 2 days or a particular day, and at the end of the session, you ask children, what was your muddiest point? What was your clearest point? So when you say, before you exit the class, you ask children, where did you struggle? What was your challenging moment? What was your happy moment? When were you best? That is an exit card. And that can be done in any subject across any level. It is a reflection of the children's, it is a reflection of the children by the children for their own learning, actually, where they find out, they assess, they look back. What is it that they found very interesting? What is it that made them curious? What is it that they found challenging and difficult? And how can they move ahead? So this is their own reflection that you are asking them to do actually through exit and entry cards. Now, what happens in an entry card is when you enter the class and you are beginning with a topic, you just write the topic on the board and you just share the topic with the children and you say, okay, what is it that you know already about the topic? What is it that you want to know more about the topic? And how are you going to discover more about the topic? So that becomes your entry card. After you've covered up that topic for a day or two, your exit card becomes your muddy point, your challenging moment, your best moment, your curious moment. And then you connect your entry card questions with your exit card questions and bring them to a consensus.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Sunita ma'am is asking how to manage with more than 50 students, especially in SSC class, that is social science class.
50 students is a huge number, I must say. However, that is where formative assessments and these strategies come into picture, because these formative assessments have something for everyone. If you have 50 children, you have only 15 minutes. Make a worksheet, say of 10 marks or 15 marks, that can have, say, 5 marks of MCQs, 5 marks of fill in the blanks, and 5 marks of 1 mark question answer. So there's something for everyone. So in this case, you go from lower order thinking skills to the higher order thinking skills, from recall, recap, and learning to comprehension and interpretation. Don't take it to very high of creation and evaluation or composition, but from this, if you keep the Bloom's taxonomy from the lower levels only up to the middle levels, you can cater to every child in the classroom.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Ramani ma'am is asking how can we conduct FA for LD students? Is there any special strategy, ma'am? Please, can you throw some light on this?
What students? Sorry, I couldn't get that.
LD students, ma'am.
LD,
LD.
LD meaning
Um, need to
who's
wait for a reply for that, ma'am.
okay? LD, is it low disability children or differently
Yeah,
able
mostly special. That's what she's mentioning about.
special?
Yeah, special need children, I believe.
Special needs children. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what happens again is, like, we all have, we cannot say no to children. I mean, where they're intelligent or not very intelligent. So these specially abled children also, like I said, in the Bloom's taxonomy, if you learning disability, I understand that, right? Learning disability. So there could be learning disabilities, there could be slow learners. And what happens with learning disabilities and slow learners, first you have to identify, and this is where formative assessments actually comes into picture. During the course of my session also, I mentioned quite a few times differently abled children. So when we say differently abled children, there could be somebody who will be a 95% or there could be somebody who will be a 30%. So we have to strike a balance between both the types of children. So what happens with slow learners and learning disability children is, you have to again curate your formative assessment in a manner that not the same type or one type of questions appear in this. So what happens in this is that your formative assessment has to be curated in a manner that caters to all kinds of children. So like I said, if you're making a 20-mark formative assessment, you have to ensure how to create a task that will cater to slow learners or that will cater to differently abled children. And that is what formative assessments are about. I read somebody asking me what is KWHL strategy and chart. So let me just explain what is KWHL. So KWHL means to know, what to know, how, and where are you. So it has to be at the beginning of the session, at the beginning of the topic. So when you're beginning with the topic, you can just ask your children, what is it that you already know? So suppose I'm teaching a poem by William Wordsworth called Daffodils. So when I come to the class, I write Daffodils by William Wordsworth. Rather than lecturing my children on the topic, I'd ask them, what do you already know about the topic? What do you want to know more about the topic? How do you want to know more about the topic? And when the topic is covered at the end, then you will ask them, what did you learn throughout the course of the session? So that is how the KWHL chart comes into effect and picture.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Mary ma'am is asking, is FA better than SA?
See, there is nothing which is better than the other. Both are important in their own ways. Like I explained earlier, also, and during the course of the session, we drew a compare and contrast. Essay is also important because tests and assesses the knowledge, the understanding, and the grade pattern. So it is very important for grades and report cards. Whereas FA is used to understand the child's ability and skill, the cognitive ability. So when we are focusing on the cognitive ability and the skill of a child, we refer to or resort to FAs. But when we are talking about report cards, grading system, admissions, we resort to essay. So both of them are important in their own way, and it is not that one is better than the other. However, FAs really help and are very fruitful, constructive when you talk about slow learners, when you talk about learning disabilities, and when you talk about the differently abled learners.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Uh, uh, one Another teacher is asking, do you express the assessment in ratings?
So there is no rating or grading per se for the formative assessments. These are, yes, there are marks. So you can either have it for 10 marks, 15 marks, don't have it for 50 marks or 100 marks. Then the purpose is defeated and lost. FAs should be small capsules, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, small portions, small topic, recently done topic. So suppose you've covered up a topic just yesterday or 2 days back, and then you give them a gap and say, revise this topic and we'll conduct an FA on this particular topic for 10 marks. Now, in those 10 marks, I leave it up to you whether you want to do 5 marks of fill in the blanks and 5 marks of true and false, or match the following, or word wall, or a quiz, an MCQ, 1 mark answer, 2 marks answers. So that depends on the teacher, the class, the topic. So based on all of these situations, you curate your FA in a manner that, just keep in mind that a formative assessment means there is something for everyone, from a lower order to the middle order thinking. We don't go for a very high order thinking skill or ability in FA. We need to have something for every learner, for every child in a formative assessment, so that we can understand each learner, each learner's cognitive ability, each learner's potential, skill, and comprehension power in the class.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Kumar sir is asking, how many topics do you suggest for FA?
Not more than one topic, because again your lower your slow learners and children with learning disabilities will be challenged, and they will be discouraged and demotivated. So small portions, a topic. So suppose I have taught a poem, I have taught a story in literature, or a chapter in history, or a chapter in geography. If you think the chapter is very big and will take 10 days to cover, break it down into 2 portions, conduct an FA in the middle of the chapter, because that is where you will understand whether the children have followed whatever instructions have been given during that transaction, or is it that children are lost. So an FA will help you understand the child's comprehension, where the child is at the moment, and how you can take the child or the learner forward and ahead with where the child is right now. So don't take up huge topics, don't take up two big topics, and take one topic at a time, small portions, small capsules, 10 marks, 15 marks, and that's it.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Samruddha ma'am is asking, how can we relate this with NEP?
So NEP also talks about cognitive ability, skills, and the day-to-day transactions. So this is how we are relating the small portions and capsules, skills, and cognitive ability with conducting FAs on a regular basis, fortnightly, one. Even if you conduct 2 FAs in a month for every subject, each teacher will be able to understand what is the area of interest for the child, what are the skills that the child already possesses, and what are the skills that we need to work on with the child. I can read a question here that how to use these assessments when there is a lot of syllabus to be completed. So, yes, I understand. We are all running against time. We're all running against syllabus, curriculum, content, board exams. All of that is agreed to, accepted. I myself am a board teacher. I teach grade 10 and grade 12 both. And there is so much of a rush and completion of syllabus that we leave behind the concept. We leave behind the skills. So how we align the content, curriculum, and learning is, in a 40-minute class, even if in once in 2 weeks you devote 10 minutes to a 10-mark FA, it gives children some sort of sincerity. Also understand that with FAs, children don't leave everything towards the end, because we know our learners, right? We know how our Indian children are. They leave everything for the end. They think that they will study at the end and they will score marks and get over with it. However, with FAs, small portions, small capsules in every subject, every fortnight, if they study, it doesn't become a pile up and pile on towards the end. So, with even huge syllabus, if you take 10 minutes once in a fortnight, to conduct a 10-mark FA. I think that will serve the purpose.
Thank you for the reply, ma'am. Ma'am, we are running short of the time.
I, yes, I can
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
that.
yeah. Thank you, Pooja ma'am, for a very engaging and informative session for our community of teachers. I am sure that our teachers have got a lot of takeaways from this session. Thank you so much, all the participants, for engaging with us today. To register for more such upcoming webinars, please visit my center.
However, Harsha, if I can give them my email ID just in case if anybody wants to get back to me to for more clarity and on formative assessments.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can I? Is there a way I can write it on the chat box or comment box?
Uh, we can send it this thing, ma'am. You can just, if you have
Yes.
the slide, you can just show it on the slide itself, ma'am.
So it's just Pooja Jain Benjamin at gmail.com. POOJAJAIN Pooja Jain Benjamin at gmail.com. Just in case if anybody has any queries regarding formative assessments, any more strategies, if you've not been able to understand any particular strategy and wants to reach out to me, please feel free to do that. I shall revert and reply to your queries.
Thank you, all the participants again.